let's go live and go over an IELTS speaking part 2. We're going to talk about some different tips and strategies for part 2. I want to check to make sure the sound is working. We did a YouTube video this week. I just want to make from me, and now there's a chance for that is why it are not on 4, 5. Need not working. Alright, so I think we are all set. We're going to go over some speaking strategies, some tips for part 2. This is what we are going to talk about. So I want to review part 2, what you can expect. Also want to talk about an example for part 2 and what to expect for part 2, note-taking strategies, introducing an idea, so how to start your answer for part 2. Also some tips using descriptions. This is one strategy you need for part 2, and techniques you can use. And then finally, what if you need more to talk about and you cannot think of what to say? So to start, part 2, if you're not familiar with the IELTS exam, part 2 is you get a topic, and on this topic it is maybe, well, we'll see an example. One example is a country flag, and it will ask you some questions that you need to answer about a country flag. Okay, and then you have 1 minute to take notes, and you can write down anything you need to organize your thoughts. Okay, don't write down everything. It's important to write down some things that will help you to remember what to say, and then you will have to talk for 2 minutes. So make sure you don't stop talking until the examiner tells you to do so. Okay, so try to use a variety of vocabulary and complex sentence structures. But make sure you are confident with the words you use. So if you can't think of a word, that's okay. Just use the first word you can think of. If you're struggling to try to think of a very complicated or complex word, just use a simpler one. So this is an example of a topic for part 2. So the country flag. Describe your country's flag. What does it symbolize? Where does it come from? What does it mean to you? And do you like your country's flag? So if you receive this task card for part 2, you would be expected to take notes for 1 minute and then answer these questions. So let's go back to the table of contents and we'll see what can you expect for part 2. So there are actually 3 very important things to consider for part 2. The first is to organize your thoughts and speak logically. So it's testing your ability to do these 3 things, and one thing is your ability to organize your thoughts and speak logically. Also, your ability to change between tenses. Okay, so for part 2, for the first question, what does it symbolize? This would be the present tense, but then you would have to switch and start talking about the past tense for where did it come from. Okay, and then you'll need to switch again to what does it mean to you, to the present tense. So you need to be able to transition smoothly between these tenses. And then finally, adding details to your response and give a clear, coherent response. So coherent is one of the ways you are scored on the speaking exam. So this means, can you clearly express your ideas. Okay, if we go back to the table of contents, we have some note-taking strategies. So it's important for when you take notes that you don't write everything, so your notes should not be too long. They should be written so you can understand them. It's a perfect chance to organize your thoughts. Using 1 or 2 words is a perfect way to help you remember what to say. So here's an example of some notes you can take for this task card. So the topic might be an interesting place in your city. So you might need to describe an interesting place in your city. Why is it important? What is the history? And what does it mean to you? So the notes would be similar to this. It's just 1 or 2 words. So your park memorial is the name of the park. It's the biggest in the city. It's great for summer and winter. During the summer you picnic. During the winter you go sledding. Some history. It is a war memorial. I grew up going to this park. As a child, I went there in high school, and now I still go. I can tell my story about when I went sledding at this park, and then finally I can conclude. So visit every time I get a chance. I visit the park every time I get a chance. Okay, so this is very organized with an introduction, a conclusion, and some things and details, and a story and examples in the middle. Okay, so we'll go back and let's look at introduction or introducing an idea. Okay, so there are several ways you can start your response for part 2, but you need to make sure it makes sense. Okay, you can't just start talking. I think it's important to introduce your idea. It shows logical speech. Okay, so you might start off with some of these examples. One example would be, or a really good example, the last couple are more complex. So you could say, first off, I would like to start by saying that I don't normally go to sports events, but the last one I went to was a baseball game in Taiwan. Okay, so that's a more complex introduction to the topic. And then you would start to tell or start to talk about your time at the Taiwan baseball game. Okay, so I think actually that's next. Some tips. So there are a lot of tips actually. I have 6 different tips. Just gonna talk about them pretty quickly. If you want, you can pause this video and when it's on the replay and you can you can read the tips. So don't write down all your thoughts for the note taking. Okay, I talked about that a little bit. Try to think of a catchy introduction. So try to sound interested. If you use a catchy introduction, it also shows your ability to use more creative language. Okay, also make sure you answer all of the questions on the task card. Okay, also tell the examiner why you chose the topic or why is the topic important to you. So why are you talking about the topic, or why is the topic fascinating? But maybe you really don't like the topic, and that's okay too. If you don't like the topic, you can just tell the examiner why you don't like the topic. Okay, and the last 2, keep your thoughts organized. So start with an introduction, kind of like the notes. Start with an introduction, add some details, tell a story, provide an example, and then conclude your thoughts. Okay, and then finally use descriptions. So this is a strategy you need for part 2. This is an example of how I used descriptions to tell a story. Okay, so the underlined words, the bold words, are part of the story that is describing something. Okay, I found a $10 bill, so it's describing the type of bill. I was walking home from school and I looked down and found it on the ground. Okay, so these are some basic descriptions about what happened and where and when, also walking home. Okay, then it looked just like a normal $10 bill. So this is another description, what it looks like. And then it had our famous president, Alexander Hamilton. Again, another description. It seemed very real. Okay, again, a description. It was the same green color, the color description. When I got home, I compared it to another $10 bill. Turns out the bill was slightly smaller. Okay, again, description than a real $10 bill. I found out it was a fake. Okay, so that's a pretty humorous story there. Okay, then let's talk about a couple techniques. I think that is next. Just make sure. Yep. So some techniques to use. So you can see a couple examples of these techniques in the course, but on this slide you can see how you could use a response by using one of these techniques. Okay, so for example, you can introduce the idea and then tell an experience. Okay, so take for example going to a sports event. If I could use that same introduction, first off, I don't normally attend sports events, but the last one I went to was a baseball game in Taiwan. So that's my introduction. Then I can tell about my experience. I can say it was amazing. I ate hot dogs. I drank some soda. I almost caught a foul ball. Okay, you can talk about what happened during the baseball game. And then add details. So again, this kind of goes with your experience. Add as many details about the experience as you can. And then the future. So you could say, well, if I had the chance, I would definitely go to another baseball game because it was a lot of fun. Okay, and then finally, conclude. You can conclude your statement. Okay, and then technique number 2. This is the same. You can the same idea, introduce, details, examples, change, and conclusion. So you can give some examples of, maybe you can talk about, your task card asks you to talk about exercise. Okay, you can talk about what kind of exercises you enjoy, or what kind of exercises are good for people, or and then you can talk about how maybe you start exercising and it's changed you and now you're a healthier person. Okay, and then you conclude your thoughts. Okay, and then next we have need more to talk about. There we are. Okay, so maybe you have a problem saying more and you can't think of what to say. Okay, so these are a couple things you can do. One is summarize what you said previously in a different way. Okay, this is not the best way to receive a high band score, but it helps you from getting a low band score. Okay, if you can't think of what to say, it's better to say something than nothing at all. And so you can just summarize again and maybe increase your band score if you paraphrase correctly. Also, try thinking about other details you could add to the story. So maybe you were talking and then you forgot about, or you don't know what else to say, and you're halfway through. Just add more details to what happened, or add more details about the flag, or add more details about the sports event. And then answer these questions. Are 2 good questions you can think about if you get stuck. You can say, how come? So how come you decided to talk about this idea? Or why does it matter? Why is what you just told the examiner important? Okay, so let's go back to, okay, so that is those are some tips and strategies for IELTS Speaking Part 2. Okay, and it is a lecture from my course. There's actually, oh man, I can't remember now, maybe 4 lectures in each part for long lectures like that. Maybe there's over 100 minutes, I think almost 130 minutes, so a little over 6 hours for you to practice your. I want you to receive that course. So if you sign up now, you have about a day and a half. Okay, so I will personally email you throughout your time in the course. I will also have a couple live Q&As, so webinars. This will be maybe hosted by me with other students, or if I don't have a lot of students at the time, it might be just you. But I'm looking for students to help me also improve the course. Okay, so if there are some things you would like to see added to the course, you can suggest those, and I can add those as I develop the course. Okay, so have another day before the price increases, so I'm really excited to help anyone that wants to take the course now, especially while I am still developing the course. It will really help me make it better, and it will help me make it better for. And because I'm still developing it, the price is very low, and I really want to help you or help any student. That's why I find me here, setest.com. Okay, and if you want to find me on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook. You can leave a comment on YouTube. I'm probably going to make a quick live video on Facebook because most of the students are in the Facebook group, and I'm not sure if everyone is able to watch the live YouTube videos yet, because I'm still working to get everyone to subscribe to the YouTube channel instead of just on the Facebook group, because I think YouTube is working a little better. Facebook works wonderful with my phone, but with the software, YouTube seems to be doing a bit better. I tried playing that video and doing that live, but I'm not sure if I understand that setting yet, so I need to practice with that a little more. Okay, so thank you. Again, if you have questions, leave a comment below, and we will see you next time. Happy studies.